this morning. I am driving on the way home. I have about another almost 2 hours probably. I actually don't know because I haven't looked at it off the top of my head, but I have a ways to drive, so I wanted to make a video. I've mentioned in the past that I like to listen to videos, whether they're podcasts or reaction videos, when I'm doing long drives, because for me it helps the time to pass quicker. And it made me think about something, and I thought, well, there's no better time than right now for me to make a video. Side note, I worked an event over the weekend that was in the sun, and I have a really bad sun rash, so if y'all see anything that's going on, that's what that is. I even used witch hazel, and I need to use some ice to see if I can cool down some of the inflammation. But yeah, I'm way more sensitive to the sun these days than I realize. And even with sunscreen, yes, even my people of color and of a melanin background, please still wear your sunscreen. I don't care how much melanin you have or how rich a complexion you have. It is still imperative to wear sunscreen. That's just a plug for sunscreen. But yeah, even with sunscreen, I still got a really bad rash on my face and my neck and hands, kind of. I don't know. Anyway, so that's just a side note. Alright, so I was watching a reaction channel that was reacting to the deplatforming of Fresh and Fit. I don't know how many of you watch or whatever, but they are a major channel that was a part of the Red Pill community. I'm not even going into that, but if you want to do your own research, fine. But I didn't watch the whole thing because some of my favorite channels have already covered it, and I don't see the point in just watching it over and over and over again. But one of my other favorite people was reacting to a reaction channel that reacted to Fresh and Fit, so I just kind of wanted to see her take on it. But long story short, I noticed that no one has talked about the true definition of free speech, so I kind of wanted to dive into that a little bit as well. One thing that Fresh and Fit always wanted to talk about or complain about was being censored and their rights being violated when it came to free speech. Y'all, I can't speak for other countries because I don't live there. I can only speak for the United States, but the protection of free speech is not just a blanket statement for everything, and that's one of the reasons why I feel like sometimes I was born in the wrong generation. Excuse me. I feel like I was born in the wrong generation sometimes, because people will hear a coined phrase, or they will hear trendy words, or I call them hot topics or hot phrases, and they'll just run with it without doing any of their own research, without doing any of their own background searches, without doing their own reading. Do people even read anymore? Do people even do that these days? I don't know. But free speech doesn't, like I said, it's not a blanket statement. It doesn't cover everything. The point of free speech is to ensure that if somebody has a difference of opinions with someone else, or someone in a political position of power or something like that, it doesn't always have to be, with another person in a government position, but just in general as well, that you are protected from political retaliation or consequences. But it's a difference of opinions. It does not include things like obscenities, fighting words, or speech that's very inflammatory that would incite fights and violence and things like that. It doesn't cover child pornography. It doesn't cover things like false advertising. It doesn't cover like legit threats. Like I don't know the name right off top, but there's some dummy that was posting legit threats to the current president, talking about what he would do, and had a legit plan. Free speech doesn't cover that. No, especially when it's such a inflammatory threat like that. You're not just saying, oh, I'm gonna beat that dude's ass, excuse the French. You are literally saying, I'm going to use X, Y, and Z weapons and take you out. I'm gonna do this and that and that. I'm not going into all of it, but there was a guy that did that, and he's no longer alive. So I just use that as a very specific example, but yeah, those categories, and it's probably more, but I'm just giving a blanket, overview. Free speech doesn't cover that. It doesn't cover obscenities, false advertising, child pornography, real threats, fighting words. But, do your own research. Don't take my word for it, even though I try to present as much factual information as possible. I still encourage all of my crew on here, and friends or whatever, whenever we're having conversations, to do your own research. But I just wanted to talk about that. So that's free speech. Let's talk about censorship. Censorship, to an extent, is a good thing. It's not. A lot of people, especially in the world that we live in right now, always think of censorship as suppression. But censorship isn't just about filtering things that the government may deem to be outside of their scope of what they think should be represented or not. It also covers things like obscenities. For example, in schools, you want censorship, right? I know if I were a parent and, for example, one of my children, let's say that they were in like grade school, not even middle school, but grade school, and they're beginning to talk about their bodies. I don't want somebody coming in to be a live model, exposing themselves to children, and then it be protected under censorship. Just because children need to be taught about their bodies and they need to know, the difference between men and women and things like that, that does not mean that you don't appropriately teach them information. Another thing is the type of language that is used. You can, when we're referencing different body parts, there are nicknames for things. There's ways that you can talk about things without being just abrasive and gross. And I think when channels, reactionary, inflammatory channels like Fresh and Fit, say things or act a certain way or do certain things and they're rewarded for it, they think that it's okay, but they forget the true definition of these words. And just because you think that you haven't been, or that the problem hasn't been addressed at the time, that doesn't mean that the problem isn't going to be rectified eventually. That's kind of another topic, but anyway, freedom of speech and censorship still has a place in society. As crazy as society has gotten to an extent, there's still very much a need for censorship and the true definition of freedom of speech to be enforced. It just is. Some things are just not appropriate. There's a reason why there's child-friendly content. There's a reason why there are movie ratings, general, PG-13, mature audiences, R-rated, NR. Like, there is a reason for that, because at every step there is censorship. You know what I mean? A child, and I keep using this reference because, one of my biggest passions is working with children. So I like to stay in the scope of what I know best. But yeah, a child can't handle horror nights at Universal Studios. We'll use that. If they're 5, they can handle a Scooby-Doo special about Halloween and a little bit of scary music. They can handle that, but they will be censored for things that are not age appropriate, for things that are not developmentally appropriate. And if we keep that in mind and apply that appropriately to other subjects, to other situations, and to other forms of entertainment, etc., then we would be so much better off. Now, I realize censorship to a certain extent is obviously not good. We have situations like North Korea, we have situations like China, we have a lot of things that infiltrate an entire society, that immobilize their individuality and their freedom as a people, and that is not okay and not acceptable. But again, that's another conversation for another time. So just like with anything, there are pros and cons to censorship. There's extremes on both ends for censorship, but there's also a lot of good that comes from censorship, and there's a lot of good that comes from reinforcing the true definition of freedom of speech. So I would like to see more legit influencers and content creators talk about these things. And if y'all notice, a lot of times I'm making these videos just to get things off of my chest. It's not that anybody's going to hear it. It's just, if it reaches one ear, then I'm like, okay, phew. At least I got out it's not even a frustration. It's more just, sometimes I just need to get it out, because then I'm like, okay, somewhere in the universe it was heard and I feel better. But yeah, I will wrap all of this up by saying, or by encouraging y'all to continue to do your due diligence, to continue learning. Don't stop growing. Do not rely on these people, these sites, the social media, your favorite content creators, your favorite influencers, your favorite news channels, whatever, to just feed you information without you doing your due diligence. That is your responsibility as just a person, as someone who is, living their lives in a society. If we cut down on just letting anybody feed us whatever without fact checking them, and without developing our own opinion based on the information that they were given, the actual information, and how you process your opinion based on those two channels of information, we would be so much better as a society. But again, that's my little soapbox. So that's really all I have to say. This is kind of a side note. I will say one other thing. The way that Fresh and Fit was deplatformed or taken off the, I think they call it the YouTube partner program. I guess that's where you become monetized and you start earning money on a channel. Obviously, I know nothing about that. But I think that serves as a lesson. And I think that YouTube did that intentionally to make Fresh and Fit an example to other content creators, because they exploded on the scene of YouTube very, very quickly, and they got way too big, and it's an old saying, they started smelling themselves. And I think YouTube, because they jumped on the scene so quickly, there is no way that YouTube didn't keep them on their radar. I think they intentionally let Fresh and Fit get very comfortable and get very inflammatory so that their takedown was seen, heard, and felt across almost all platforms, all channels, all influencers, all content creators, because like I said, they exploded and they were all over the place because of the type of inflammatory content that they were making. So I think that they intentionally let them keep going and let them get real good and comfortable and make them feel like they were untouchable, that they couldn't do any wrong, and then that's when they cut them down at the knees. I think that was intentional, and I think that they did that on purpose. And now they're feeling it. I don't feel sorry for them. I think that they brought it upon themselves, and it serves as a reminder that you cannot abuse the guise of freedom of speech and the pushback of censorship and the fact that you're bringing in money as a blanket of protection against what you're doing. I'm not going to go into the type of content they made because I only really kind of watched clips from, again, other reaction channels. Their stuff was way too inflammatory for me, and I didn't like it. But the things that I did see was horrible. I'm talking like things in the same vein as white supremacy, Klan hats, making very, very demoralizing statements against women, against people of color, against modern women. It really ran the gamut. So, I'm never going to be a content creator like them, or even smaller channels that have maybe 100,000 or 200,000. I don't think this channel is ever going to really go anywhere, and that's fine by me. Like I said, I think I use my channel more so as a place where I can just vent, because I stay to myself 9.7 times out of 10, and I don't always have like somebody that I could just call and just say random conversation mode and just talk about things. So I think that's one of the reasons why I probably started this channel, is to just do things like that. So I don't think I'll ever have issues like that, but I do hope that people who are on that hustle to grow their channels and things like that really do their due diligence. I know that it is boring and very dry and not fun to read terms of conditions and agreements and stuff. For example, like at the end of a lease, when you have all that stuff that you have to agree to and stuff like that, I'm one of those people, I actually read that stuff. I highlight stuff, I go over it, I ask for clarification. That stuff is very boring, but it will serve you well when you are on a warpath to create a space for yourself in spaces like this, or in just life in general. You don't even have to be on a platform like YouTube in order to do it. But start getting used to doing your own research, reading things, comprehending. It's okay to look things up. We have the most access to information than ever before in the history of the world. Our phones aren't just for creating videos and watching funny shorts and things like that. You have literally the world at your fingertips. Use that to your advantage. Go look up something. If you don't know the meaning of something, look it up. Hey Siri, hey Alexa, hey Bixby, hey, ask. That's your responsibility. Like I said, it's not always fun, but it is necessary, especially when you are an adult. So that's really all I have to say. Crazy, but they did what they did. But yeah, if y'all have time at some point, look up and do some research on freedom of speech in the United States, and look up the definition of censorship. And if you're confused, look up examples of censorship. Depending on the different category or environment, you can look up censorship, good versus bad, appropriate censorship, whatever. Do your due diligence, do your research, and, drop a comment if you learned anything about this. That's really it. I'm going to just listen to another podcast for a little bit. No, I don't want to listen to that anymore. I'll listen to a true crime documentary. But anyway, that said, I hope y'all have a fantastic day. My weekend was the event was great, but like I said, I got a horrible sun rash, and a little bit of this and that, but I don't really feel like going into it. Anyway, y'all have a great Sunday, and I'll talk to you later.